I would say a great way, you were talking about long sales cycles. A great way I find it to shorten is to answer the whys in a piece of copy. This kind of really works well, especially with longer copy forms. But even in shorter copies, even in like if it has to be, say, a Facebook ad or something, if you answer the why, the what, the if, and even with if scenarios, if you answer all those questions, then it kind of nails in the message. It kind of closes that loop much faster, and the customer doesn't have to go back and think. The customer is like, oh, these all my questions are answered, I guess I'll just buy this. So
So
that's
you mean
something that you can do.
So you mean like having it in your writing, make sure you're proactively dealing with potential objections they might have or potential issues. So like think about all the questions, like put yourself in your audience's shoes and ask,
Absolutely.
your business's success depends on relationships, relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm connecting with Sweha Hazari. Sweha is an experienced copywriter with over 9 years of experience. She helps brands connect with their audiences better through well-crafted, inclusive copy and content strategies. She also runs a newsletter called The Copy Kitchen by Sweha that dishes out actionable insights on writing and marketing inclusive copy for diverse audiences. Congrats on The Copy Kitchen and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you, Carl. I love it here.
Thank you so much. So how can companies help their writing stand out in today's noisy market?
So in today's market, as you said, there's so much competition, and the way you can stand out is really building that emotional connect with your audience. And even in B2B marketing, there's a way to do that. There's a way to remind your audience that you care for them and that their requirements, their needs are important for you. So if you convince your potential customers of that fact, they'll buy from you.
Got with all the SEO and pay-per-click and all the metrics that companies got focused on, they forgot that there's another human being on the other side of the screen or on the other side of the connection making the decision, and that they make decisions using emotions, and they want to feel, they have to like and trust a company before they buy from them. And if you don't make them feel, then they're not going to act. And so I think a lot of writing, especially with all the AI content out there, that people think, oh, I can just have AI write it and it's going to get the same response, but it doesn't, because it doesn't have that human to human emotional connection aspect of it. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I am.
So what's the story of like a time you've helped a company improve their writing, and what was the impact of that?
Even better, I'll tell you a story about my dad. So my dad back in India, in my hometown, purchases all his clothes from a very local brand that does not invest in a lot of marketing. It does not even have a significant social media presence. Now, their clothes aren't that fancy or even of that great quality, and they are not the masters at super competitive prices. But my father has been a loyal customer for over 3 decades.
Wow.
That's something and to the point where he's proud about his loyalty to the brand. Why? Because he feels special. Every time he goes to the store, they recognize him. They they gift their loyal customers something like balloons or tote bags or even bookmarks, even if they don't kind of buy anything from the store. And he gets a birthday text from the brand every year.
Wow.
So that's the kind of human connection that is a luxury these days, because um, you get about 50 emails, marketing emails every day in your inbox, and they just assume things about their customers. They don't really half of the times know their customers. So wherever I get that kind of personalization, I get that kind of human connect, I will buy from them.
Yeah, that makes that's. I can see why your father goes back to that same clothing store. It's not
Yeah,
because of the product. There's plenty of other places to get clothing. It's because
yeah,
he feels special being a customer there. And
yeah,
so I'd imagine for companies, no matter where, if you're not a clothing store in India,
yeah,
if you're trying to build those relationships and get people to understand that you care about them, the initial touch
absolutely.
point is often going to be a written either email or some sort of content. Um, so, what are ways that you go about helping people make writing that shows their audience that they're understood and they're seen?
So, couple of factors really. First, understand your audience really well. Go above and beyond creating detailed customer personas. Try and understand what the audience want and try to get into their shoes. And really, like, it's not even meeting the demands. It's about thinking how your product would make them feel, why they would want to keep buying your product, what else, how else you can make them feel, seen and heard. So if you nail those things down, you got your copy like that. There's we you can a way to do that. A way to start is looking through the voice of customer. For example, I have a client which is like a restaurant. If you go through the reviews, you can see what customers are saying about the restaurant. That's the voice of customers. So using that to kind of draft your marketing copy will work wonders, because then actually you are getting into the shoes of the customer and thinking how your customer would think.
That's a great tip for any business owner, especially one that's B2C and has that customer feedback source like on Yelp
Yeah,
or on their or like any sort of surveys where not just what people are saying, but the words they use, how they say it. Because I imagine the vocabulary you use in your writing needs
absolutely.
to match what the vocabulary your audience uses to help it sound like, oh, that's the way I'd say it. Whereas if you if your vocab is either too sophisticated or too simplified, there's going to be
Mhm.
that mismatch in tone or mismatch in perception that you might not have in mind when you're writing it, but your audience is going to have this reaction to it because it doesn't sound like or doesn't read like the way they would write it. And so if you check out your reviews, not just for what they're saying, but the language, and I'm sure you could make like a word cloud sort of thing pretty easily, or like a vocab list for if you're talking about this, here are the words that our customers use to say like when they're talking
Yeah,
about these sorts of things. And that could be a way to help create like a writing style guide of sorts. So is that something you
yeah.
kind of suggest people do?
And the second thing is just kind of discovering that human connection. I feel that's kind of missing in B2B marketing as well. Um, Whenever you hear about B2B marketing, you think of, you know, concocting very dry kind of copy, very formal, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, say I'm selling it to a business. The business, yeah, you need to talk about stats and you need to talk about ROI, but you also, at the end of the day, need to talk about why that business would succeed with your service or product. And if why that business would, be able to trust you, be able to depend on your product. So B2B marketing also kind of benefits from content personalization as well, I believe.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because it's still a human being on the other end who's making the decision, or who has to champion it to their bosses. And so, if your content, if your writing shows you understand who they are and their position in the company and what they're feeling, what their some of their personal uh, fears are about moving forward, and you're able to address those, that is going to help move the needle a lot more than just focusing on the product or just about the sale itself. But if you start by showing understand who your counterpart is on the other side of the deal and what their pressures are, you're building a much deeper relationship, especially in B2B sales, because it takes so long, or B2B marketing is such a long sales cycle. You have time to get more personal, and your writing can reflect that without being considered like unprofessional as a deal breaker, because it's probably a breath of fresh air if nothing else.
Yeah.
So if people are, we kind of mentioned a few suggestions already, which I think is really awesome. But if someone is listening to this and goes, oh my gosh, I know my writing and marketing copy could use some improvement, what is like an actionable tip or like a thing they could try like right now to start improving the quality of their writing?
I would say a great way, you were talking about long sales cycles. A great way I find it to shorten is to answer the whys in a piece of copy. This kind of really works well, especially with longer copy forms. But even in shorter copies, even in like if it has to be, say, a Facebook ad or something, if you answer the why, the what, the if, and even with if scenarios, if you answer all those questions, then it kind of nails in the message. It kind of closes that loop much faster, and the customer doesn't have to go back and think. The customer is like, oh, these all my questions are answered, I guess I'll just buy this. So that's something that you can do.
You mean like having it in your writing, make sure you're proactively dealing with potential objections they might have, or potential issues. So like think about all the questions, like put yourself in your audience's shoes.
Absolutely.
And ask, what are all the questions or like objections they might have to moving forward to the next step of this deal, and having in your writing and addressing those in your writing, so you show that you understand what they're thinking about and what what's going through their mind, and you're not
so there's this really cool exercise that I do. It's called playing devil's advocate. So for any kind of copy that I write, I first put myself, like I tried hard to convince myself what to not buy the product, and whatever shortcomings that product might have, and whatever objections I might have with the product as a potential user, I note them down, and that way you can kind of draft your copy around those objections, kind of show the customers, oh, this is your concern, we are kind of meeting your concern, or we are kind of understanding your concern in this way. So that really helps as well.
Yeah, I like that idea of approaching it of, okay, I put yourself in the client's shoes. What are all the things they could say no to this deal? And then that's basically your content topics for, because I think there's I think that's a great tip, because it shows you're thinking about more than just your product and how awesome it is. You're thinking about what would a naysayer say about it,
Yeah.
or someone who's has concerns. And if you think about that more, one, it'll make your copy better, but also two, it might help you realize where your positioning or like your product could use some improvement. Because if in that process you
Absolutely.
realize, oh, we didn't have a good answer for this, you probably need to fix more than just your writing. You probably have to deal with the actual a
Yeah.
product level problem. So I can see how that would be a valuable process for writing, and also for just making sure that when you're going to market, or if you're launching a new product or whatever, that you're not just have like the rose colored glasses of like all the things you're excited about, but you miss
Yeah.
something that your potential buyer is going to go, yeah, but you're missing this, I'm not going to buy. And then by that time you're like, oh, dang it, we're in trouble.
Yeah. Because it happens so often, right? We say even the copywriters are too close to the product that they are selling, and you might not catch the obvious faults with the product. Doing this kind of exercise, getting into the minds of your potential customers, it kind of helps you take off those rose-tinted lenses and see the product, see where your copy might fall short in convincing your potential customers, kind of work around it.
Yeah, I think I know I've heard there's trends of companies not doing as much research into their customers over the last 10 years. They just kind of keep assuming they know. And I
Yeah.
think one of the more and more companies now are going to be researching more of what like their customers, how that, like to try and build these relationships. Like this devil's advocate exercise makes a lot of sense. And I do think that even if you have good copywriters on your team, like you said, if they're so close to the product, it can be really hard to get that outside perspective because they're so immersed in it. And so I
Mhm.
imagine that's one of the real values of bringing on someone like you who can come in with a fresh perspective and go,
Mhm.
hey, you guys are super excited about this, but you're missing this glaring problem
Yeah.
that your potential buyers are going to notice in like 2 seconds flat. And if you don't have a good answer for it, you're going to be really struggling. So
Yeah.
if wants to reach out to you, like, what are some of like where can they find the copy kitchen, or what can they do to reach out to you and get better insights into where their copy needs work?
I try to make the newsletters in Copy Kitchen as detailed and as comprehensive as possible. But they can always go to the Copy Kitchen and leave me a message, and I read every message that is sent to me, and I reply to them. So there's that.
And so when you reply to those messages, do you give them immediate feedback on like, so here's how you could have improved the message you just sent to me? Or do you not?
No, no. I also as well coach some new budding copywriters. So I will, maybe you can link the
Oh yeah, I
uh,
can put that in the show
yeah,
notes. Sure. Yeah, cool.
link it. Yeah.
Cool. So when with a lot of companies, there's one more thing because I just had this idea of
Mhm.
there's this big push. People are trying to use more AI for content writing, and and something you mentioned before we started recording that I want to
Yeah.
make sure we include was that you asked like, if you ever read something that's been AI generated that really moved you emotionally, um, and it really, I couldn't think of anything, and so I wanted to get kind of your input on like, it can definitely help kind of get the ball rolling, but it doesn't seem like, I think, what are some of like the ways you see, um, like, how can people write more so that it is evoking the right emotions and not just use AI for all this stuff? Or like, what's your take? Because I know there's a lot of pressure for people to use AI, but is there a way
Yeah.
to find a good middle ground where you're like, you start with AI and then make it more emotional later? Or like, what's the How do you see
I'm
that
not an
dynamic?
A. I'm not an AI naysayer, Carl. In fact, I think it is a great tool. I use AI for my work. I use it as a search engine. I use it as the starting point of my research. I use it to generate some ideas, but at the end of the day, it's a tool. It cannot replace human ingenuity. It cannot replace human creativity. So the companies that are kind of solely, I believe, depending on AI for creation and not using it as a tool, will risk losing out on the human touch. Will risk losing out on their customers because AI at the end of the day will give you a mediocre kind of content based on everything that is in the on the internet. Uh, it's like it's like a master woodworker, right? A master carpenter can use like tools to create the most beautiful wooden sculptures, but the tools cannot create the sculptures themselves. You still need an actual human, real lived human experiences to kind of guide the content formats or the kind of content that you put out for your customers. You cannot depend solely on AI. That being said, I use AI. AI is great for research. If you just do, again, too much dependence, I would caution against because AI tends to hallucinate.
Yeah.
And the last thing you need is for customers to kind of not believe you because you have heard and you have like kind of given some false stats that AI threw in. So always do your due diligence if you
Yeah. All right. Well,
given
thank you.
figures.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you got to fact check it. You can't just generate it and
Yeah,
spit
you
it out.
cannot.
You're asking for trouble. So, well, thank
Yeah,
you so much for connecting with me today, Sweha. If you
yeah.
enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Sweha, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.